Good evening and welcome to Policy Crossroads from the European Policy Centre. I'm your host, Garvan Walshe, EPC Head of Communications. And this week we are very privileged to have with us David McAllister, MEP for the CDU and also former Minister President for Lower Saxony. Welcome, David. And Amanda Paul from the European Policy Centre, Acting Head of Programme for Europe and the World Programme. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Now, the topic today is going to be Ukraine, and the first question, Mr. McAllister, is: are we actually doing enough to supply Ukraine with the equipment and support it needs in this very, very difficult military situation that it faces?
European leaders have said that we need to support Ukraine as long as it takes. We in the European Parliament have said it's not only about supporting Ukraine as long as it takes, but whatever it takes, that Ukraine in the end can actually be successful. We have never before in our history supported a third country like Ukraine. More than 90 billion euros have now already been given to Ukraine. Financial, economic, humanitarian and military support. A lot of further amounts will flow to Kiev through the new Ukraine facility. And we will continue to support Ukraine where we can. Yes.
And when we're looking at the situation on the battlefield right now, the last few weeks have been pretty grim. What do you think the most urgent needs are?
I was in Kiev 2 weeks ago with a group of chairs of the European Parliament's different committees, and speaking to the Ukrainian Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, other representatives, we always heard the same. When it comes to military support, what Ukraine needs desperately is ammunition, air defense, and long-range missiles. But what we heard was that at the front line, in the moment, the Russians have 8 times more artillery than the Ukrainians, and of course, this is a very difficult situation, so we need to ramp up our own production of ammunition to provide it to the Ukrainians, but also we need to help them buy the remaining artillery ammunition which is left over on the world market.
Amanda, when it comes to these critical things, artillery ammunition, ammunition for air defense units, what do you think are the next 3 steps that need to be taken to bolster the Ukrainian defense?
I mean, we need to give Ukraine what they've been asking for months. I mean, to be honest, I'm sick and tired of having the same conversations over and over again. The questions that were being asked today are the same questions that were asked 1.5 years ago. It's clear what Ukraine needs. They've been talking about it. President Zelensky every night asks for it. The air defense systems, the things that they actually asked for in the first days of the war that they didn't get. They had to wait nearly a year, I think, to get many of these weapons. And there's a significant deficit now. Odessa is exposed. It's bombed almost every single day. Odessa is the hub of the Ukrainian economy, but apparently we are unable to deliver new air defense systems to Ukraine in a timely fashion. The same for the long-distance weapons. Where are they? I don't know. When is Ukraine going to receive them? I don't know. There needs to be much more clarity on when Ukraine is going to receive these weapons. It's important for their planning, for their operations. This void is a gift to the Russians. The Russians have made use of the failure of the allies to deliver in a timely fashion the necessary weapons for Ukraine to retake its occupied territories and to eventually have a victory. I mean, Putin is sitting in the Kremlin these days smiling because he thinks he still has time.
Putin may be in the Kremlin, and in the United States, in the Speaker's chair, there is Speaker Johnson. There was some news yesterday that there now may well be some votes on aid to Israel and aid to Ukraine. Do you think Congress is going to finally get its act together?
We can only hope and we can only beg the Americans to finally take this decision. This has been going on for far too long. The Ukrainians are desperate for further US support. And I call on all American lawmakers, please put your party political divisions aside. This is about supporting Ukraine, a brave nation which is not only defending its own country and its own territory and its own freedom against a Russian war of aggression, but this is about defending the European It's about defending the international peace and security architecture. We need to give the Ukrainians what they need. And we Europeans are doing what we can. Yes, we should do more. We could do more. But it's especially now about also providing better guarantees for the Ukrainians. That's why this US decision is overdue.
And isn't this also about European security and the security of the biggest foreign investor in the United States, which is the EU, and the biggest recipient of American foreign investment, which is, of course, the EU? Do you think, if, in the event of there might be a Trump administration, that kind of more transactional argument would be able to work?
What happens on the 5th of November will be decided by the American people. We in the European Union need to be prepared for both outcomes of the presidential elections. We witnessed in 2016 to 2020 that it was a rather bumpy ride under President Trump these 4 years, and that you never know exactly what we will be up to, but we need to be prepared. That's why I would always argue that we need to reach out already now to politicians, to lawmakers, to members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. And we need to also reach out to potential Republican office holders, trying to make clear that we are in this together and that the transatlantic alliance is, of course, hugely beneficial for us in Europe, because the United States are our most important ally. They guarantee our security, and that means our freedom in Europe. But on the other hand, it's also important for the United States to have close allies in Europe. We are in this together. And when it comes to Ukraine, this is of crucial importance to realize that this is not only, quote unquote, a war of Russia against Ukraine. This is much more at stake. The Russian war of aggression is a fundamental attack on the European peace and security architecture, and that we are together defending the international rules-based order. And that's why it's so important that the United States remain engaged and that they continue to be the #1 supporter for Ukraine.
A fundamental attack on the rules-based international order. But if this attack is supported or is abetted by a certain occupant of the White House, how should Europe prepare itself for that scenario?
I mean, Europe should have been preparing for that scenario for the last couple of years. I mean, it was clear already 2 years ago that Donald Trump would run again and that would be potentially victorious. Unfortunately, the EU has a habit of leaving it till the last minute or even beyond the last minute before really starting to prepare. But I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised that there are some signs that Europe is now starting to take its defence more seriously. We've seen an increase in defence spending. There's more desire now or more initiative to actually cooperate between countries, which is positive. But at the same time, I still don't believe that some countries have actually recognized the actual mammoth size of the threat that we're faced with, exactly what Mr. McAllister just mentioned. This is a European war, and there still seems to be some denial about that, particularly from some countries that are further away. At the same time, there are many countries, particularly those on the eastern flank, that have been very well aware of this threat for a long time and have, adequately prepared themselves for it to the extent that they could. But there are others that haven't. But as I said, we're seeing some signs of that. Miraculously, even talking about bringing back military service, something I thought we'd never see, including in this country, Belgium, which it was done away with more than 20 years ago. But it's now recognized that this was a mistake, that we need to have military service, that we need to be building our militaries, we need to be prepared for all sorts of threats.
Military service, or as Macron said, a war economy? Do you think we're taking enough steps to move to a war economy if that's indeed what we need to do?
If you look at the next 5 years in the European Union, the next term, it will be 3 main topics we will be dealing with. How to defend European democracy from the outside and from the inside. Prosperity. How can Europe remain competitive compared to the North American and Asian markets? Because prosperity is also about economic growth. And the third point is European security and defense. We have to make major steps forward in doing more for our own European security and defense, as Amanda just said. And we will have to spend more. We are going to spend more, but if we're going to spend more, we want to spend it more effectively. And I believe that doing this together in Europe is the way forward. Let's put it this way, we want to remain transatlantic, but on the other hand, we will become much more European. It's about strengthening the European pillar within NATO, and it's about establishing a functioning defense single market. It's about ramping up our defense industrial production in Europe. And what we need is common research, common procurement of arms, of weapons, of technologies and other as a first step for European integrated forces, which will be our long-term goal.
If you're looking at common procurement, would you have a target for the proportion of defence procurement and defence equipment spending that should come from common European as opposed to member state sources?
Well, it should be much higher than now. At the moment, far too much is being spent at a national level and only with one country actually involved. What we need is to step up European cooperation. That is the whole idea. For me, the European Defence Union, which is the long-term goal in the next years, is a bit like a puzzle with 5,000 pieces. We have now set the frame with the European Defence Agency, the European Defence Fund, with other issues, but now we have to put these pieces together and make it work. And that's why I also welcome that Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has proposed that in the next Commission there should be a commissioner with a dedicated portfolio for European defence. We need somebody who coordinates better exactly these activities. The next big defence investments, the next big defence projects in Europe should be joint projects. I'm looking about the battle tank of the next generation. I'm looking at the fighter plane of the next generation. I'm looking at the fighter drone of the next generation. These need to be European projects, and we definitely need France and Germany always involved in these projects, and then we would invite other countries to join. I'm thinking about Italy, Spain, Poland, just to name a few. And of course, our European activities would always have a standing invitation also for the United Kingdom, who has unfortunately left the European Union, to also be involved.
Thank you. I think that's all we have time for now. Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Thank you, Ms. Paul, for this very important and urgent discussion on the future of European defence. And we have, I think, one further episode of Policy Crossroads coming, not hosted by me, but by one of my colleagues. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.